Hi everyone, this is Hannah from Wonderful Woodlands, and today, back by popular demand, we are going to do another full pattern. So today we're going to do a flower. Last time we did a leaf, and our flower today is going to be a clematis. So I am using Lion Brand 24/7 yarn here. This color is Sky, and I'm going to be using the same needles we used last time, which are size 7 single pointed needles in aluminum. So let's dive right in and get started today. We are going to do a knit cast on method, which is this pattern is for absolute beginners. So if you've never knit before, stick with me. And we're going to go through, we'll tutorial all the stitches as we go. So our beginner cast on method is called the knit cast on method. So to do this, you're going to have your yarn in 2 hands here. You're going to make 1 twist, and then you're going to catch the piece that's on the bottom of the twist through the loop, and then pull the loop to make it tight. This is called a slip knot. Now you're going to take your slip knot and you're going to slide it onto your needle here. And then this is going to be your working needle. So this is going to go in your left hand. Your empty needle is going to go in your right hand. And then from here, we're going to do our knit cast on method. So to start with, we're going to thread our empty needle through the loop. So both of our needles are going through the same loop of yarn here. Now we're going to take you're just going to leave your shorter tail over here. We're not going to worry about this. You're going to take your longer tail of yarn. You're going to wrap it around the bottom needle. You're going to catch this loop on the bottom side, and then we're going to thread it back onto your left hand needle. So now we have 2 stitches on the left needle instead of 1. So we're going to make 12 stitches here. We're going to keep doing this. So you're going to thread your needle through the first stitch on the loop. We're just going to leave this stitch alone for now. We're going to take our longer tail of yarn here, we're going to wrap it around, we're going to catch this loop through, and then we're going to thread this onto the needle. And then we'll do it again. So both needles are going through the same loop. Wrap your yarn around, catch your stitch, and then thread your stitch onto the needle. We have 4, we're going to 12. Wrap your yarn around, catch your stitch, slide it onto the needle. Wrap your yarn around, catch your stitch, and add it to your needle. Wrap your yarn around, catch your stitch, add it to your needle. How many do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Wrap your yarn around, catch your stitch. This is 9. Wrap your yarn around, catch your stitch. This is 10. Wrap your yarn around, catch your stitch. This is 11. And wrap your yarn around, catch your stitch. And this is 12. And I'm going to count one more time because many times I have miscounted when casting on stitches, and it's frustrating to go back and fix. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Perfect. So now we are ready to start knitting. So both needles through the same loop of yarn, wrap your yarn around, catch your stitch, and slide it off. So this is 1. We should have 12 stitches here. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So that is your first row. Now we're going to flip this over. So the first thing we're going to do is actually going to be a knit 2 together stitch. So instead of normally when we go for a knit stitch, we're going to go through 1 stitch, but this pattern calls to start with a knit 2 together stitch. So it's very easy. Instead of slipping your needle through 1 stitch, you're going to slip through 2 stitches. So I'm going to catch my first 2 stitches on the needle here. You can see both needles are going through the same stitch. This is the same stitch that we just used in our cast on method. You're going to wrap your yarn around, You're gonna bring it through and catch this, and then instead of sliding one stitch off the end of your needle for a knit stitch, we're gonna slide both off, and that's what makes it a knit 2 together stitch. Now we're gonna knit 8. So you're gonna just catch one stitch this time, wrap your yarn around, catch the loop, and slide the stitch off the end. So that's 1, 2, wrap your yarn around, catch your stitch, slide the loop off. 3, yarn around, catch the loop, slide it off. That's 3. This is 4, yarn around, catch the loop, slide it off. This is 5, yarn around, catch the loop, slide the stitch off. This is 6, yarn around, catch the stitch, slide it off. That's 7, wrap your yarn around, catch your stitch, slide it off. I don't know if I counted right. That was our knit 2 together stitch, and then we need 8. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, this is number 8. Wrap your yarn around, catch your stitch, slide the loop off. So right now you should have 2 stitches left on this needle. Now we're gonna do what's called a knit front back stitch. So we're gonna knit into the first loop, same as a regular knit stitch. You're gonna wrap your yarn around the back, and you're gonna catch the loop. Now don't slide it off. The next thing you're gonna do is you're gonna slide your needle into the back loop on the back side here, and we're gonna make another stitch off of this stitch. So we're making 2 stitches instead of 1. So you're gonna do the same thing. You're gonna wrap your yarn around, you're still gonna bring it, you're gonna catch this loop on the front side here, and now you can slide this off. So we just used 1 stitch to make 2 stitches. Now we're gonna knit our last stitch like regular, wrap the yarn around, catch the stitch, and slide it off. Okay, now the rest of this pattern is very, very easy because we're just gonna do what we did again. We're gonna repeat that. So we just did our first repeat. We're gonna repeat this 5 more times for a total of 6 times. So let's meet back here. You can pause your video, finish your 12 rows, and then we'll come back and look at how to bind off. Now we're gonna do what's called a bind off row. So we are going to, because we're going to connect our flower petals later to make them into a flower, we're only going to bind off 10 of our stitches and not all 12. So to bind off, we're gonna start by knitting 2 stitches, just like regular. So we're gonna knit 1, and then we're gonna knit 2, and then we're gonna take our left hand needle, we're gonna lift the first stitch on our right needle, and we're gonna slip it over the second stitch. And that is a bind off stitch. Now we're gonna do it again. We're gonna knit 1, and then we're gonna lift our right stitch, and we're gonna slip it over the left stitch. Then we're gonna knit another 1, and then we're gonna lift the first stitch and slip it over the second stitch. We're gonna knit another 1, lift the first stitch, slide it over the second stitch, knit, lift your stitch, and slide it over. Knit 1, lift your stitch, and slide it over. Knit 1, lift your stitch, and slide it over. Knit 1, lift your stitch, and slide it over. And we're gonna go all the way to the end of the row. Knit 1, lift your stitch, slide it off. Knit 1, lift your stitch, slide it off. And then this is our last stitch on the left hand needle. We're gonna knit this stitch, and now we have 2 stitches left. So we did a bind off of 10 stitches because we had 12 to start with. We have 2 left, and we're gonna stop here. This is gonna be the end of our flower petal for right now. So now we're gonna do the whole thing again, but we need to use these knitting needles. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take these 2 stitches. You don't just wanna slide them off the needle because they'll unravel. So you need to put them on a holder of some sort, and you have 2 choices. I have a bunch of knitting needles that I'm not using right now. So I'm gonna slide these, even though this is a bigger needle, it's not gonna mess up your work. You can do a bigger or a smaller needle. And if you only have one set of knitting needles and you don't have any backups to use, you can just use a scrap piece of yarn, and you can let your stitches sit on the yarn. So I'm gonna slip mine here onto this holder needle for later. And we're gonna come back to these in a little bit. So we're gonna slip stitch number 1 and slip stitch number 2. And then I already have a couple of flower petals going, you can see. So we're gonna make 7 flower petals total. I have 4 right here, so we're gonna keep going. Oh, and then we also, I forgot, have to trim our end here. Okay. So we got some scissors, we're gonna trim our end here. I'm gonna leave probably a few inches, maybe upwards of like 6 inches or so of yarn. We'll just trim it right here. And then these are all on a holder needle. We'll come back to these in a little bit to turn them into a flower. Okay, now once you have knit all of your 7 flower petals here, we're gonna take them off. This is the part you wanna be really, really careful with, because if you pull any of these stitches out here, your petals are going to start to unravel. So be really, really, really gentle and make sure you're not pulling on any of your ends here. But we're going to lay these out in a circle, and we want to make sure they're all going the same direction. So we're going to have all of our points pointing toward the same way here as we lay these down. Whoop, whoop, whoop. And I started to pull one of mine out here. If it starts to pull, you can just grab the loop and make the loop a little bit bigger so that it comes back. So we're gonna go here, and we're gonna connect all of these in just a minute. Okay, so let's look at all these and make sure they're all going the same direction first. We have all of our points on this side. So we have on the right side all the way around. So these look good. Now we're gonna take, it doesn't really matter where you start, but you're gonna take one of your ends, take one of your longer ends if some of your ends are different sizes. We're gonna thread your yarn through a yarn needle. And then we're gonna loop this through, we'll go through these 2 first. And this is gonna prevent them from pulling out. And then you can pull this tight, and then we're gonna go through the next 2, and then the next 2, and then the next 2. We're gonna go all the way around, and then the next 2, and then the next 2, and then the last 2 here. Okay, and then this was my first one. I've already tightened these. Now we're gonna go around to this top yarn on each of these, and we're gonna tighten up our loops so that they're caught by this piece of yarn here. And then once the loops are tight, then we can tighten up our yarn that we threaded through. There we go. And then we can take this and tighten this up a little. So you can definitely see our flower starting to take shape here. There we go. So you can make this so it's nice and tight. And then if you have any last loops left to tighten up, you can give a little bit of a tug on these. Perfect. This is looking really, really good. Now, let's connect. So we have our end here. This is where we started and where we finished. Let's real quick, we'll just loop this through. Any of these loops is fine. I'm gonna catch this one right here just to close our end up real quick. Now we're gonna come back and sew this together in a minute. So let's set this aside. Okay, now the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna make the middle of our flower. So we're gonna use, this is Lion Brand 24/7 cotton, and this is in, oh, what color is this? It's a pale yellow. Guys, I can't remember the name of the color, but that's okay. I'll post it I'll look it up and I'll post it in the comments. So we're gonna, oh, you know what? I think it's lemon. I just remembered. So I'm pretty sure this is lemon from Lion Brand 24/7. So we're gonna take this and we're gonna start to create the middle of our flower now. So just like we did when we cast on earlier, we're gonna take our, the end of our tail of yarn here, we're gonna make one loop, and then you're gonna catch the bottom piece through the loop to make a little slip knot here. Then we're gonna put this on to our first needle. We're gonna do our knit cast on method again. And this time we're gonna make 16 stitches. So remember, we're gonna start with both needles going through the same loop of yarn. We're gonna leave the short tail and we're just gonna work from the long tail over here. Wrap your yarn around, catch your stitch here, and then slip it on to the needle with the first stitch. So now we have 2 stitches. We're gonna do it again. 3, we're going for 16, 4, 5, and every time I cast on a stitch here, I'm tightening up my yarn just a little bit so that it's snug up against the needle. You don't want these to be too loose because they'll slide around. What are we on? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. And then remember, we're going to count our stitches again just to make sure, because sometimes you get 1 or 2 off. So we're going to count these just to double check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Perfect. Okay, now our next row is going to be a bind off row. So no knitting, we're just going to coil this into a little circle for the middle of our flower. So we're going to cast on our first row and we're going to bind off our second row. So remember, we're going to start with a knit stitch. We're going to knit 1, knit 2, and then we're going to lift our first stitch and slip it over the second to bind off. So we're going to knit, and then we're going to bind off, and we're going to knit, and then we're going to bind off, then we're going to knit, and then we're going to bind off, and we'll knit and bind off, and knit and bind off, knit, 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 bind off, just 2 more, knit, bind off, and then this one we're not saving any stitches this time, so we're going to do all of our stitches. So you'll knit your last stitch, you're going to bind off your last stitch, and then to catch this end here, you can make this long. Remember, you don't want this to pull out because it will unravel. We'll cut a little bit of yarn here. You're going to take your end and you're going to pull it through to catch that loop so that this doesn't pull out. And then what we're going to end up doing is rolling this into a little ball. So we'll just coil it around itself like this, and then we're going to use our ends here to sew it in place. So that's going to be the center of our flower. Okay, so coming back to our flower over here, I'm going to show you what to do with all of these loose ends now. So we're going to start with one of these ends in the middle. And what we want to do to anchor our flower, so all of these leaves are, or petals are separate from each other right now, and we want to sew these together. The good news is we don't need to sew all the way up to the very tip of each petal because they only crisscross each other kind of down here at the bottom. So we're going to take This one I'm going to go up this line right here with, and I'm just going to attach this petal so that it's connected to this petal just up about this far. So the way we're going to do that, it's just with a really easy sewing stitch. There's no right or wrong stitches to grab here when you're threading your yarn through, but you're going to grab one stitch from one petal and one stitch from the other petal to sew these together. There we go, just like this. And we're just going to go all the way up this little line here. This is probably about 5 stitches or so. 2, 3, 4, and we're probably going to do 6 stitches instead of 5. We'll go, oh no, you know what, I think 5 will be good. We'll skip the last one because that will give it a little bit of flexibility at the top so that it's not so tight. Okay, so we just sewed the edge up here from the bottom to the top using this piece of yarn. Go ahead, take your needle out, and we're going to leave this yarn. We're going to weave the end in, but we're going to come back and weave the end in a little bit. So let's do our second one now. I'm going to leave you here. We're going to do this for all of the petals all the way around our flower. So we're going to do this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one. Come back, we're going to take a break, and then once we've done this, we'll flash forward and I'm going to show you how to weave your ends in. So go ahead and sew up all of your edges here, and I'll meet you back in a few minutes. Okay, so by now you should have sewn all of your petals together, just up these little edges here. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to attach the middle. Take your little yellow piece of yarn that we knit just a couple minutes ago. We're going to roll from the end until it makes a nice tight little ball here. We're going to thread our needle. And then the first thing we're going to do here is we're just going to take a stitch right through the middle to anchor this so that it doesn't unroll on us. There we go. So it's going to keep our middle nice and round. And then from here, we're just going to sew this into the middle of our flower so that we have a cute little yellow center to our flower here. And again, kind of like with the when we were sewing the edges of the petals together, there's not really a right or a wrong way to do this. You definitely want to sew several seams on each side so it's nice and anchored, and then I like to go across the middle a few times because that helps my roll stay rolled, and it's not gonna, pieces aren't gonna start to fall out from it. I did one over here, I did one over here. I'm kind of jumping around here. I grab one over on this side. I would say try to do at least one on each side of the flower here. Then we'll cut back through the middle and come over here. And then we'll grab another one down here. And then we're about ready to weave our ends in. There we go. That's probably about good. It's not going anywhere. Okay, so to weave our ends in with the yellow, there actually is a little bit of yellow poking out here on the back if you flip it over. So I'm going to bring this down and through, and we're going to weave this end in on the back because it's going to hide it the best so that we don't have little tails poking out. So you just kind of want to grab, and we can, if you're really color conscious, you can do these all on the yellows. If you're not so worried about it, the flower's going to be face down, so you can weave in on the blue stitches as well, because you're not really going to see this part back here. But basically the goal is you want to go through 3 different stitches in 3 different directions. So we'll go 1, 2, 3 here. We'll get a couple more over here. 1, 2, 3. And then we'll grab a couple more over here. 1, 2, and 3. That's pretty good. And then from there, once we've done 3 stitches in 3 different directions, then we can snip our yarn tail because it's pulled through enough stitches at this point that it's not going to pull out. Now we need to take this part, the part that's maybe a little bit more tedious. We got to take all of these yarn tails here And we're gonna weave all of them on the back of our work. So this is why we saved it for the end, because we don't wanna weave it on the front side where you're gonna see them. We're gonna do these on the back side. So we'll start with this one over here. Same like we did with the yellow. We're gonna go through 3 stitches. These are easier because these are all blue, and so the color will hide in nicely on these blue stitches here. So we're gonna go 1, 2, 3, then we'll go back up through these 3 over here, and then we're gonna go down through these 3 over here. And then once we've done 3 stitches in 3 directions, we're gonna trim our tail. So go ahead and do this with the remainder of your yarn tails, and then we'll take a look and see what a finished flower looks like. Congratulations everyone, you did it. This is your finished flower. This is called a clematis. Don't forget, if you liked today's video, to subscribe and like, and come back soon because we'll see you for some more knitting patterns and tutorials. Thanks so much for joining us.